What is good, everybody? Welcome to Midwest Sagacity. I'm Midwest Savage, and this is going to be part 2 of the banking collapse. Now, before we get started with the rest of that video, which, man, if you watch that first video, the guy's just laying out the plan of what he sees coming and what all the indicators are showing him from all the financial metrics of what's to come here in the next 12 to 24 months. But before we get started in that video, I wanted to thought about this for a little bit, and I wanted to go over base reality, right? Because I said we all have to learn to agree on a base reality. What I meant by that was there used to be something in the older generations, because they all agreed how to take everyone's reality and interact within the main reality of the world. Basically taking your own experiences, your own reality, and it was the rule set for going out into the world and interacting with everyone else's reality. And the base reality that they agreed upon was something they used to call common sense. I know that's a word a lot of younger people haven't heard, but man, it's not common anymore, is it? And I think that's because we're teaching the younger generation that it's okay to feel that way because that's your reality and that's how you feel, and people need to respect that. But the fact of the matter is, nobody cares about your reality. They care about how you interact within the reality of everyone, the base reality. To say that there is no base reality and that everyone lives in their own reality is just a very flawed statement. Because whether you're driving down 66th Street or not, 66th Street is going to be there. Just because it's not in your reality, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It still exists. People interact with that street, regardless whether you do or not. And that's the same thing with math. No matter what, 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. Just like if you see an older person struggling, common sense, a younger person will come over and help them. If you've seen somebody standing with 2 items in their hand and you had a whole grocery cart full of items, common sense would say, hey, let that person go. Common sense is the base reality that everyone agreed on, and now we destroyed common sense. People are confused. They don't know what's what. They don't know what the right thing to do in the easiest of situations. Common sense says, don't put your hand in a fire. We got people putting their hands in fires, and then they're surprised when they get burnt. Just like common sense says, don't kill people. Well, it's been pretty evident lately that that's not the case, right? You got people going in, shooting up banks, shooting up schools, all because of their feelings. The thing about common sense is, it has nothing to do with feelings. It throws feelings out the window and says, no matter how you feel, this is how you should act. And I think that's something we need to get back to. With that in mind, let's get into it.
At least 6 shots from inside the building.
I mean, what do we got to do?
Parties are running out.
What is it that we can say to get people to wake up?
I'd like to begin today by updating you on our efforts to recover the debris. China has a high-altitude balloon program for intelligence. The president also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects.
FEMA is now sending a team to East Palestine, Ohio. This
right, everyone. That first part of the video was surely intriguing. It's very interesting, especially coming from a guy who just deals with money. When you start hearing these guys talk about these type of things, that's when you should start being a little worried, because these guys normally don't care about anything except for what the markets are doing so they can make the right moves to make people money, make themselves money. And when they start talking about stuff like this, man, that's when it's time to worry. And if you haven't seen the first part, I suggest you check it out. I'll put a card up here. I'll put a card up here in the corner. And I really suggest that you check that one out. That way you have some context of the rest of the conversation of what he's about to say next. Let's go ahead and jump right into it.
No, you would not be crazy for saying so. Again, I always like to reference that expression, don't ascribe to malice what can be explained by stupidity. But there does come a point when there is just so much collective stupidity, where there is just one misstep after another, that one has to start to wonder if perhaps there is a plan.
And that's what I've been saying so long. It's just almost mathematically impossible that so many bad decisions, they're just bad decisions, have been made for it to all come together like this. So I've been saying the same thing for years.
Somewhere. And again, it's pure speculation, and I hear your point that you don't have any evidence to back this up. But let's talk about that executive order that you mentioned, and that is Executive Order 16047 that President Biden signed into law on March 22nd. And that does facilitate the development of a central bank digital currency, or Fedcoin. And there has been progress on that front. In fact, some people are saying that the Fed Now payment system, which will be fully launched in July and coincidentally launched in the middle of a banking crisis, is potentially setting the rails for this.
That's exactly right. You know, just magically they decide to raise rates after the worst time, and due to a pandemic. They had 14 years before that to raise rates, and they never did, which would have made this upcoming recession a lot smoother. And by the way, it did come out that the Fed said we are going to have a mild recession. So I got more videos. This is, we're going to have to hit this one pretty hard, because we can't allow them to just say they made all these mistakes. So that gives them the right to take away our economic freedom with something like this CBDC. It's very interesting that all this came together right now in the middle of an economic crisis that's about to get worse.
But again, Edward, on the upside, there has been some pushback here from politicians against this. We've had House Majority Whip Congressman Emma's pushback with the CBDC Anti-Surveillance Act, and he wants to make sure that there's oversight over the Fed before any kind of digital currency is issued. He's maintaining that any...
And real quick, there's just no way that's going to happen. There's not going to be any oversight. The Federal Reserve talked Congress into giving them their own power. They are a separate entity. A lot of people don't know that. They're completely separate from our government. Anything they do, we can say that we want to do certain things, you know, and have them do certain things, but they don't have to do it, and they don't have to answer to anyone. And they're not going to give that up. No way.
Digital dollar must uphold American values of privacy, individual sovereignty, and free market competitiveness, that needs to be upheld. We've had Florida Governor Ron DeSantis come out recently and say no CBDCs in Florida, and create awareness of exactly what it is that...
Which there's no way that he could even pull that off. You can't say that there will be no CBDCs in Florida. If it's a note from the Federal Reserve, which the CBDC would be, it has to be accepted. Now, businesses themselves don't have to accept it, but it's going to be the money. So if they don't accept it, what are they going to deal with, and how are they going to do any business around the world and with other states? They won't be able to.
That a CBDC is. And we've also had Senator Ted Cruz come out just this week and speak up against CBDCs and the potential threat that they are to privacy, to economic freedom, and how they can be an Orwellian tool of surveillance and control. Senator Cruz introducing legislation to prohibit the Fed from establishing a retail CBDC. So with this pushback,
what she was saying there, the retail CBDC, that just means that if they're going to create the CBDC, it can only be used between the banks and the businesses. It can't be used. He's trying to get it so that it's not used by us everyday folks.
Is this in fact inevitable, or is there some way that perhaps legislation or even protests can prevent this from being implemented?
Look, I certainly hope this can be prevented. I'm very hopeful because there seems to be a very
he doesn't look very sure when he's saying that. He wants to be hopeful, but it doesn't look like he's convinced himself, just with that face right there.
Grand awakening of many people who used to think I was crazy. All of a sudden, I have lots of credentialed experts wanting to talk to me. So this is not crazy talk. This is what they're trying to do. Whether or not they're going to use it for evil, I mean, I'm of the opinion that when there's that much power, you will use it for evil. That's just the way it is. It's human nature. And I have a lot of hope that it's not inevitable, but it takes a mass awakening of all sorts of people. Shows like yours are doing that. It's being discussed now at the political level. And, you know, we can do our own personal protests. I don't use my credit card for anything that I can. So when I go to a restaurant, I pay cash. When I go to Costco, I pay cash. When I go to the gas station, I avoid opting in, even with credit cards are, you know, a rudimentary form of this, but, you know, all have credit scores. Just start using cash. And I went to Washington, D.C. to testify before Senator Ron Johnson about another issue in December. And I was in Dulles Airport, and I went to go buy some water, and they said, we don't take cash. And I held up my $50 bill and said, this is legal tender. I am not going to buy it. And the cash register guy said, well, no. I'll put it on my card. You just give me the cash. So he had already received this kind of feedback from many others, and he had a side business where he was.
All right.
So the good news is it seems like people are at least aware of this cashless, this move to cashless is a first step before digital currencies.
And using cash is a way of protesting against this.
And I'd love to see everybody start using cash. Just whenever you go out, have the cash. Forget the credit card.
Yeah, I'd love to do that too, but that's just really tough, isn't it? It's really inconvenient. You got to go somewhere to get the money. Not only that, yeah, the potential with all the crazy stuff happening in the world right now. Someone robbing you. That's why a lot of people went away from cash, but man, we don't want to go to this either.
All right, cash is king. Look, you know, Edward, you're saying that this is becoming, thankfully, more aware, that people in the mainstream are becoming more aware of this. Now, we typically, you know, talk to people and they paint a similar scenario. And one could argue, well, you know, they're in the gold sector. They have an agenda. Their agenda is to sell gold. They're talking up their book. Or on the flip side of that, because we're seeing similar themes and similar concerns at blockchain and crypto conferences. And then similarly, people will say, oh, well, you know, they have an agenda. They want to talk up Bitcoin. That's the play here. What would your agenda be in saying that this is coming? I mean, this doesn't really feed into it.
It's kind of it's kind of funny. You could tell she doesn't even want to ask this question, but you kind of have to, like, let it be known that you're not trying to sell a service or something because of all these people that, you know, do, like Peter Schiff is always talking about, you know, buy gold, and he's talking about economic collapse, and the only way you can, you know, protect yourself against it is buying gold and stuff. And like I've said before, I think that's just a dumb idea. If the dollar collapses, society starts to collapse. No one's accepting gold. They can't eat gold, can't shoot gold, they can't put gold in their car. You want to talk about a currency, those will be worth far more than any gold. I mean, what are you going to do with gold? You can make some jewelry or whatever, but what are you going to do with that? You make jewelry for what? For food, gas, clothes, things like that. So you might as well skip the gold and just, deal with deal in those type of things. So I just don't see gold really ever coming back as a legitimate currency. You can't break gold up that easy. What are you going to do? Like, oh, this is worth, you want to buy a pop. How do you pay for that in gold? You just take out a little knife out and start shaving some off. It ain't going to happen.
Any of, say, what products that you're marketing?
Yeah, so I'm not marketing any products. I'm an analyst. I like to predict what's coming. So I'm putting my reputational risk on the line, not receiving any kind of benefit from plugging Bitcoin or gold or silver. I'm not involved in those markets. God bless them. I have nothing against gold, silver, or Bitcoin, but I'm just analyzing what I see coming.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you my bona fide best guess.
And again, it's just sad that they have to do this because, so many people that are aware of the things that are going on, but are also at the same time trying to make money by selling their stuff. So,
and I've been in the credit markets and equity markets for 30 years, and I know how the game works. And this is where the analysis leads me to this end game.
Okay, so we're still hopeful, though, that somehow the CBDC agenda could potentially be derailed if there is enough pushback against it, is what my understanding is. But can anything derail the broader implosion that you're seeing?
No.
No.
There's going to be a new system. The dollar is kind of at the end of its. The dollar is a fiat debt-based credit system. So for every dollar created, there's an associated $1 debt, and it needs constant credit creation to keep it going. And M2 going negative is a bad sign. And so the reason why they want to introduce the CBDC is they know that we're kind of at the end of this epic supercycle debt bubble, and that it's going to implode whether they want it to or not. So if you know it's going to implode, and you're the people that designed this, or maybe you didn't design it, but you've come to the understanding it's at the end, wouldn't you want to introduce a new system and be on top of, in control of that?
right, because they just want to keep that control. So whether they did this on purpose or not, they still want to keep the control. And that's the thing. Should we let them even have it? The answer's probably no, because they're just going to do this with the new currency. I have a feeling that this might not trickle down to the normal guy and girl until, I mean, I know a lot of viewers that watch this channel, and there's not a lot of them, but the ones that do, they're in the know. They've known about these things, and I see them in the comments. They're putting stuff out there that it's just basically, we all know it. And yeah, there's a great reset coming. It's called the Great Reset, and this has been in the works for a long time. So this will probably roll out when that happens. They got to reset everything because every country's in debt. And if every country's in debt, we got to do something to reset it. Usually it's going to be a huge war. And then after that, you reset.
That's why they want to take us to CBDC. I'm suggesting we need to protest that. And we, the people, the global citizens, need a seat at the table of the new monetary system. Because, for years and decades, the monetary systems are hashed out in backdoor rooms. Bretton Woods, there's been a couple of those. And then we delinked from gold in the 70s, and we had the petrodollar. And that gave the U.S. the ability to print unprecedented amounts of money and borrow as we basically exported our dollar-based fiat system to the globe. So that the globe has basically been funding the US's lifestyle for 30 plus years. So we need to figure this out. The question is the general population going to be aware of this, or enough of us that we have a seat at the table? If we don't have a seat at the table, then we have to create a new table, and that's where the Bitcoin blockchain folks come in, and there'll be a black market economy if we go the route of the CBDC total control.
Yeah, because I just don't see normal people, submitting to this. I mean, a lot of us will have to use it, but we're gonna look for other systems too. So, a prime example, your grandma gives you $100 for your birthday. Well, if you have an account with the government, which would be this FedNow service and a CBDC, and that goes into your account, that's tracked, that's income. So now your grandma can't just slip you $100 bill so you can go buy some beers or go bowling or whatever it is you want to do with your money. You won't be able to do that because you'll have to pay a tax on that. And can you imagine, just you get a lot of that throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, you didn't pay any taxes and they slap you with a huge tax bill? I mean, it's going to destroy people. It's just another a really bad way to control and tax everybody for every damn dollar they get.
That's my guess. Again, I'm just analyzing.
You're just analyzing. I get it. No vested interest in any sector or any asset class here. But if a CBDC is inevitable, you foresee a black market where potentially gold is used, Bitcoin is used, both are used.
Yeah, there'll be something. And if they win, I'm going to be part of the
resistance.
Yeah, I will declare myself. I will be part of the resistance. My two gentlemen, Carlos and Yuri, at my firm, we're working on the magic juice vaccine issue. We've done a lot of work there, but we've done that all pro bono. We're going to next set up a hedge fund, and then we're going to use that to fund alternative systems down the road. So we're already thinking ahead. We're thinking of there's going to be other systems.
You see, the problem is those systems are all going to be illegal. So you'll be breaking the law if you use those systems. And I don't know, just putting that out on TV. I mean, whatever system this dude creates is going to be slapped down first. I guarantee it. That's the problem with government. They're always seeking power and control. And the everyday person really can't do much against it. It's one of those things where everyone has to really be united.
And we're wargaming that out. So.
Okay, but again, before we get into, the potential of a central bank digital currency and everything that may entail, because again, that is still potentially preventable, although you're seeing the groundwork being laid with digital IDs becoming more and more prevalent, and that links to needing a digital wallet, and that links to central bank digital currencies, and you're seeing a breakdown of the system, which, as you say, creates the correct setting for a great reset, if you will. But somewhere along this process, you have said that you still anticipate the dollar, that you still are ultimately long on the dollar to fail up, I believe, was how you described it, especially as we have a global sovereign debt crisis with other economies being impacted by what's happening. So explain that scenario.
So the dollar is the world reserve currency at the moment, and there's $15 trillion of debt in US dollars. So as the dollar goes up, it's an indication of, credit stress globally and potential sovereign debt defaults eventually. And now people ask me, is the dollar going to go away? Is it going to go to zero? The answer is I don't know. But what I do know is the Federal Reserve wants to sit on top of the new world order, whatever that is. So people say, oh, is the Fed going to disappear? No, the Fed is trying to direct and control whatever comes next. So I don't know what's going to happen after the dollar, whether it's a world central bank digital currency. I don't know. But what I do know is if you're in charge of the current system, you're not going to raise your hands and say, oh, golly gee, guys, sorry about that, and walk away. You try to control and reestablish dominance. And unfortunately, the central bank system it's a system that's inherently unstable, and it's led to wars in the past. I see kinetic wars on the horizon, not just Ukraine. I see global conflict as a result of the dollar failing up.
And that's what I've been talking about. Yeah. Basically, the last time this happened, we had first World War I, and then second World War II. What comes next? Like you said, a global conflict.
Well, let's break that down, because we are seeing a de-dollarization trend following the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the increased weaponization of the dollar. We're seeing many countries move away from U.S. economic dominance. The BRICS alliance, for example, will be discussing a new reserve asset to potentially rival the U.S. dollar this August in Durban, South Africa. We're seeing new alliances being formed very rapidly. Chinese President Xi Jinping recently concluded a visit to Moscow. Right before that, China mediated the resumption of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Longtime foes now resuming diplomatic relations. Both countries have expressed interests in joining the potential BRICS alliance, big commodity powers here.
Yeah, it's literally that bad. By us waving our dollar bills around and slapping these sanctions on Russia really hit home to a lot of these countries, to the fact that we can destroy their economy just by slapping sanctions on them, because they have to deal with our dollars and we can render them useless. And because of that, you're forcing together people. You let China, of all people, usually the U.S. is going out there and trying to get nations to get along with each other. China, of all people, sets up a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they're willing to work with each other simply because we've done so much damage around the world, waving our currency around like a weapon.
We touched on the petrodollar. That may be compromised. We know that India has been purchasing Russian oil using rupees and rubles, and Saudi Arabia has said that it's open to no longer pricing oil in dollars. So all of that sort of comes together and certainly threatens the US's role as the dominant global reserve currency. Do you see this BRICS potentially commodity-backed currency as the rival to the dollar?
I'll pose a question to you. Before that happens, what do you think the U.S. and its allies will do? There'll be a kinetic war. So whatever's coming is going to be a global debt crisis with wars. Unfortunately, again, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but this is what my analysis leads me to believe, is that if the dollar's under threat, those in power are not going to go gently into the night. There'll be a kinetic something or other, and there'll be a propaganda campaign to pitch it to the U.S. citizens.
And oddly enough, I used to work for BlackRock, but BlackRock, I believe it was last year, came out with a paper that's predicting these very same things. This is something they were saying. And again, these guys only deal in money, but they were letting their clients know what kind of commodities and things they were going to need to move into, and giving them a heads up because of what they're predicting to come. And like I said, I think there was like a 33% that the invasion of Ukraine leads to a world war. There was another 33% chance that we would have civil unrest or possibly a civil war in the United States over the tensions of race and things like that, with the Ferguson riots in Baltimore and in Michigan and Minnesota. So they're seeing unrest globally as well. And these are the type of things that they came out with a paper and they put percentages on them. I'll have to pull it up and see if I can find it.
Under the color of freedom and democracy, probably.
No, I've always maintained that if you're the king of reserve currencies, you're not going to give up your throne without a fight. And it does
Correct.
seem more likely than not that there will be some kind of military pushback, which you say does result in a kinetic war. What would that war potentially look like? Who's on what side of the conflict?
I think Europe and the U.S. I think India would side with the U.S. and then the others against that. Again, this is all speculation.
All
but
speculation.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're careening towards a financial crisis, potentially an introduction of the CBDC, and the BRICS not wanting to be part of whatever new system is developed because they know the old system wasn't very favorable to them, because we've established our dominance through the U.S. dollar. That's really the secret weapon of the U.S. government, is the dollar and its world reserve currency status. So it's our secret weapon, and they know that. That's why they're trying to do what they're doing. And that, like I said, there'll be decisions made internally at the highest levels of government that can't be allowed, and then we'll, go to war, whatever that looks like. That's, again, just my analysis.
And yes,
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, I understand. I hope you're wrong too. I've had several guests on the show that have echoed a very similar sentiment. And yes, I hope you're all wrong, but I think it's important to present these potential scenarios to our viewers so that they may best prepare for this type of event should it unfold. So what should somebody watching this interview, hearing your analysis, understanding that it is mostly based on data analysis and speculation, but nonetheless, what should somebody do?
Well, I've been recommending to people to shorten up my investment advice. I don't give stock-specific investment advice or timing advice. I've been telling people for the better part of 12 months to raise cash in your portfolio as risk assets go lower, and you can go back into the market at the bottom of this crisis, and that's been a good call. People have thanked me for the raising of the cash. I don't think it's too late to do it still. And if you're worried about your bank, which I'm not, if you're under the insured amount, don't pull your money out of the bank. But if you have money well over the insured amount, T-bills are not a bad option. 3-month T-bills, you can go to Treasury Direct, invest directly. So that's the money aspect of it. And you're also going to have to kind of get a new mindset. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and you need to be comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty. And I've found that when you actually are not in fear and anxiety, you can then see the opportunities. Because even though things are going to get crazy, there'll be lots of opportunities for those who keep their wits about them, have some cash on hand. And look, the gold people, I don't mind people buying a little bit of gold, physical gold, silver, that's fine. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. I would have 6 months supply of food just in case. And that's it. That's the best you can do, and live your life and look for opportunities when everyone else is losing their heads.
I mean, not to sound alarmist here, but usually these type of scenarios lead to public unrest.
Correct.
Should we be preparing for civil unrest? Alliance, one of.
And yeah, that's exactly right. And I think he pretty much hit the nail on the head right there. There ain't really much you could do. Try to sit here and become a prepper and all that. It's just not realistic. Get yourself some storable food so that, if the store shelves and everything like that go empty, you're not worried. You're not going to be worried about where you're getting your meals from, because that's the thing. You could store up on all the cash you want, but if the shelves are empty, they're empty. That I agree with them. Get yourself some food, if you have some weapons, make sure you have some ammunition for them to defend yourself if people get a little too crazy and start, trying to break into houses and things like that. Get your toiletries, things like that. Just stock up so that you have a few months of all of that stuff.
One of the top insurance companies has political violence and civil unrest, potentially sparked by an economic crisis, as one of the top 10 global risks in 2023.
I don't know if you heard what she just said. Insurance companies are putting out papers that are saying these things because they're trying to determine what type of risks are going to be out there. If they're going to, especially life insurance companies, if they think a lot of people are going to die and all that because of things like this, they have to, put back money and be prepared for, a large number of deaths with people that have their life insurance, and be prepared to pay out a lot of money. So they believe it or not, they analyze these types of things to make sure they don't go bankrupt when it happens.
Is that something that you anticipate happening as the economy falters and potentially political strife intensifies? Do you foresee things descending into some level of civil unrest here in the United States?
I don't want to be a doomsayer. I can't control what other people do, but if there is an economic collapse and there's an understanding of all sorts of corruption that's, surfacing as we speak, there may be some social unrest. And because a lot of your viewers and a lot of the people I've spoken to on different podcasts, they're aware of what's going on. So their mindset is good. They're prepared. Unfortunately, there are lots of people that don't have a clue as to what's going on. So they're going to be surprised and shocked by this. And their first reaction will be emotional and it will be anger. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see social unrest when the realities that I see and many of us see come to fruition. So I can't control that. And I hope that people stay calm, but it's not a bad assumption to think there might be some social unrest.
Yeah. Well, again, to be clear, we are speculating, certainly not rooting for any of these scenarios, but just giving some analysis as these events unfold as to the way you think that they more than likely will play out, but hoping you're wrong.
We'll go ahead and end the video there. This is part 2. If you guys didn't see part 1, go ahead, go back in the video or look for it at the end screen and go ahead and check it out. Again, you wanted to check out part 1 because there was a lot more information about what's going on with the financial situation. Second half was more of what can happen if it goes down like this. So thank you guys for checking out the video. Don't be afraid to share it. Drop me a like. And again, if there's a topic that's out there that's hot, that needs to be talked about, you feel that it needs to be talked about and people need to be aware of it, go ahead and drop it down in the comments. I appreciate everyone. And again, people keep asking me, what's it gonna take for everyone to finally see what's going on around them? It's gonna take you shouting at the top of your lungs. It's gonna take all you got. Peace.